Hey everybody, I'm Deez. Welcome back to the shop. Today, I haven't been out here in a while, so I'm just gonna kind of play around with a simple little project. I'm gonna make a giant punch. I've made some smaller replicas of some punches that my brother made back when he was in high school. Today, I just want to do some turning. So I'm gonna take this scrap steel bar, and I'm going to make a kind of a hefty punch out of it. We'll shape it up, kind of put a point on it, and just take off some material onto this. We'll draw it up just to kind of have a rough idea of some dimensions that we want, and in the end we'll end up with a homemade tool. I may attempt to harden it, but I'm not sure how much carbon. There's probably no carbon in this, but who knows. I'll probably blacken it or blue it, hot blue it I guess you would call it, and that'll be a little rust prevention. But why not? That'll give me something to do, kind of learn the machine. It hasn't been that long, but just want to turn something, and that's going to be the project. So with that, I'm going to draw this up, and we'll get to turning. I've got this drawn up. It's a very basic design. I like to draw things up though. As you're drawing things and you're coming up with ideas, you want to improve. As with everything I do, this is fluid. This could change as I'm working on it. But the gist is I'm going to have a bit of a flange or a head on the top of it. I'm going to turn down the body, and there'll be a 45-degree point on the end. So we'll have a nice punch when we're through. Some of the options, this one looked a little too much like a nail, this first option that I had. It would work, but I thought I'll put maybe a 45-degree angle down here underneath the head. That'll give it a little more strength too as you're wrapping on it. That way you don't have a 90-degree angle underneath the head and it could cause a weak point where it could crack, because this, in theory, this should be beaten on with a hammer. And then finally I thought, well, if things are going well, maybe I'll attempt a knurl on the very end. The knurl would need to be done first though, because I would need to put well, maybe not. If I can chuck this thing up, I might get away with a knurl without using the tailstock. I may try that first. We'll see. The knurl, it's really aesthetics. There's really no function for it because I'm not going to be holding it up there. There's no grip that needs to be done. I may attempt that at the very end, chuck this thing up as best I can, and then stick it out a little bit, because then it won't really be flexing because there shouldn't be that much sticking out. So if I decide to do the knurl, that'll be my last step. But at any rate, first thing I got to do is cut off this hole. That's not going to be useful for this piece. And then we'll chuck it up in the lathe and we'll start turning. We'll get this thing turned down and make a giant punch. So let's get at it. So it's going to be intermittent cuts because of the angle on this bar. I want to get that faced off first before we go any further. I'm going to use high-speed steel. I think that's better for intermittent cuts than carbide will be. Carbide can chip. So that's what we're going to use. We're going to get started, clean this up. I'm going to stop here for a minute, let this thing cool down, and then we'll flip it over. I'm hoping I'll be able to chuck this portion up in my jaws. Might be a little too short yet. I may have to take some off. Suppose it'd be helpful if I measured it, huh? Yeah, I may have to take some off of there, but still, doing pretty good. But I'm going to stop here and let the part cool off, and then we'll continue on. So I've got a bad end here. I'm going to rotate this and see if I can get a better cut. This really left it rough and chewy. Quite bad. Rotate it one. That's the last good corner I have on this cutter, on this insert. Put that in there. I'm going to stop here, let everything cool down. This is really hot. The finish started getting it's really rough. I don't know if it's another insert that's bad or maybe that corner was bad. I'm going to try a new insert on another tool, see if I can get a finish that's a little better than that. But we're really close. We're less than 10 thou. We're about 7 thou away from our final dimension, and that may change as it cools down. So I'm going to stop here for a while, let everything cool down. We'll come back to it, and we'll keep making this thing however we see fit. It's going to change. It's going to keep changing. So I'll bring you back once we're ready to move on with the next steps. It's still 756. I mean, it's only 6 thou to take off, but I think I'm going to change tools. This is significantly rougher. Part of it's probably the material, but I've got better finishes elsewhere. So I'm going to try to take a few thou off of here and see if we can't clean that up. If not, I'll use some emery cloth or something. But for now, I'm just going to do a skim pass, and then we'll get on to see if we can make our point on that. So what do we want to use? High-speed steel or a different carbide insert? I'm going to try my high-speed steel. It's not sharp. You can see when I was cleaning it up, I got a shiny spot there where it was rubbing. I'm going to hone this up. I'll bring you right back. Alright, let's see if we can get a clean finish on that. Yeah, that's not better. This material is just kind of trash metal, so I don't think we're going to get a great finish on that anyway. I'm just going to use emery cloth or something to clean that up when we get to that point. This certainly isn't giving a good finish on it. Get that out of there. Yeah, so we're not going to use that. I was getting better finishes with the carbide. Let's see. I'm going to try carbide one more time. A different tool. Let's try this one. See if I can't improve that finish. It's just the material. This steel is gummy now, so there was a hard outside layer. That was where you can see this is shinier. It actually turned cleaner. It looks a lot nicer. Now that it's getting towards the inside of this pin or whatever this steel was, it's getting gummy. It's starting to crumble versus peeling and making nice chips. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead on this. We'll use emery cloth to clean that up. Now I think I'm going to move on to see if we can't make an aggressive angle for our chisel point. Alright, here's the setup. We're going to put an angle on this thing. It's just going to be a 45-degree angle, so it'll be a pretty aggressive, tip on this. It is out here a bit. I could chuck it up farther, but we're going to see how this goes first because it's very concentric right now. I do need to run in reverse the way I'm cutting. Let's change that. There we go. And I think we're set. Let's see how this high-speed steel does. I don't like that. Since we're kind of done with the concentric stuff, I'm going to bring it back and chuck it up farther. I think that will make it less chattery. I think that's part of our problem here. Yeah, there we go. Let's chuck that up. That'll give me plenty of room, I think, to put that point on. All right. Let's see how that does. It's going to work one way or another. All right. Let's carry on. There we go. So that's basically the business end of this thing. So that's pretty good. It's warm once again. I think my tooling is dull from that. But yeah, ended up with a point. That was the idea. I'm going to let this cool down and then we'll continue on. Next thing we're going to do is put a better chamfer on the top of this. Everything else is pretty much done. Then we'll use some emery cloth and clean this thing up. Works for me. I like it. All right, that completes most of the turning. This thing isn't going to be fancy. We're just going to clean it up now. The top looks very good enough for what I want. But this gummy part here, yeah, we're going to clean that up. So let's chuck this up. Again, this is just to clean it up. We'll use some emery cloth and see what we got here. Scotch Brite, and get this cleaned up. That'll smooth it down, but boy, Looks terrible. Maybe we need to go more aggressive. Flip it over, finish this thing up. There we go. So there it is. Just me fooling around with the lathe, turning something that might be useful. It's a big punch is what I was going for. Add a little decorative element in the middle. Doesn't need to be there, but hey, why not? I think what I'm going to do is hot glue this too. Just feels right. So that'll be the next step. Then we can call this thing complete. I don't see the need to knurl it. That's not going to add any function to it, other just looks. Maybe someday I'll toy around with it and do it, but one thing I'd like to do is get the squeeze style knurl. That side knurl tool that I have puts a lot of pressure on the lathe, so I think I'm going to avoid it for this particular project. But next step will be to hot glue, and then we can call this project done. Here's the next step. We're going to hot glue this thing in addition to attempt to harden the tip. Maybe there's enough carbon in this steel, so we'll give it our best shot. While this is cherry red on the end, it'll be getting hot so that I can harden it. The rest of this is going to get hot as well, so we'll make sure we get it hot, and we'll try to harden it and hot glue it at the same time. Let's give it our best shot. Dip it in there, and we'll go from there. I got my fire extinguisher right here behind me, so if something goes bad, we're ready to go. But there's the setup. Alright, it's time to conclude this video. As you've seen in the previous clip, the glass jar, I kind of figured that would happen. The amount of heat that was in this piece, when I put it in that glass jar, cracked the top of the glass jar. So I kind of expected that. That's why I always use that pan. I'm going to go ahead and look for a metal container to do my hot bluing with. I don't want to be dangerous. I kind of knew that the glass was probably going to be a little dangerous in time, but it's what I had, and it's kind of, I thought it was nice so we could be able to see the pieces when I was hot bluing. But safety is a little more important, I think, so I'm going to get a metal container, put the oil into that, and that way I don't have to worry about that kind of a problem moving forward. But here's what we ended up with. It has cooled down. It needs to be wiped down a little bit. You can see the oil. It looks like it blued up fairly nicely. I'm not sure if it was hardened. I did get it as red as I could get it, as red as I wanted to go. And then I put it in the oil, and it did its thing. I don't know if it polymerizes or what it does to be rust proof, but it does seem to work. But in the end, that's what we have. There is our finished blued giant punch. I am curious if this hardened. Let's check it on a file. It really depends on carbon. I don't believe this has carbon in it. It's it's scratching the bluing off, but it bites. I don't think this really hardened. But anyway, it is a sort of a practice piece, just kind of getting back out here and turning some scrap steel that I have. Kind of a neat little design. Sometimes you get inspiration from things and you just kind of go at it, and who knows what you come up with. Again, just me messing in the shop, making a large punch, and just using the machine again. So I hope you enjoyed. Maybe it inspires you to get out in the shop and make something. But that's what we came up with today, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.